Life seemed normal and calm. My wife and I had been together for many years, and our daily routine was nothing special. I was always sure that I had a reliable and loving partner. She seemed to value our marriage as much as I did. Love and trust were the foundation of our relationship. At least I thought so. This evening was no different. After dinner, we went to the bedroom to get some rest. She said she was going to take a shower, leaving her phone on the dresser by the bed. I laid down on the bed, trying to scroll through the news feed on my phone, when suddenly her phone rang. A message appeared on the screen. At first, I didn't think to intervene, but something inside me pushed me to look at that screen. The message was from an unknown number, and it caught my attention. The message had simple words. "I miss you. When can I see you again?" My heart sank. All kinds of thoughts began to swarm in my head, but I tried to stay calm. At first I hesitated. Could this be some kind of misunderstanding? But something in that message made me act. My inner voice was screaming that this was not just a friendly exchange. I decided to look at the other messages to see what was really going on. I unlocked my phone and started reading their correspondence. The further I read, the more my heart sank. It turned out that their relationship had been going on for some time. They arranged meetings, shared some intimate moments. Everything I learned was like a stab in the back for me. My wife, the woman I loved and considered faithful, was leading a double life. I sat there, shocked and confused, trying to comprehend what I had just read. In that moment, I realized that I had lost control of my life. The betrayal was tearing me apart from the inside, and the anger and hatred were slowly building. Listening to the sound of water from the bathroom, I realized that it was time to act. But not in a panic. No, I had to be cold and calculating. From that moment on, my plan began to take shape in my head, and its first step was to make an appointment with this lover on behalf of my wife. I felt betrayed and angry, but I decided to act in cold blood. My plan was simple. First, I had to find out who she was cheating on me with. Hundreds of questions were running through my head, but I kept my emotions in check, because that was my advantage. The main thing was to act carefully, and not attract my wife's attention. The sound of water was coming from the bathroom. I had a few minutes before she came back. I picked up her phone and started answering messages on behalf of my wife. My fingers were shaking a little, but I forced myself to concentrate. "We can see each other today. Are you free?" I typed and pressed send. While I was waiting for a response, my mind was racing. I knew it was dangerous. But inside me, hatred was boiling. I couldn't let this go on. The phone rang, and a new message appeared on the screen. "Yes, in an hour at our usual place." Our usual place? This was another needle that pierced me through. They even had a place where they met. I sighed, trying to calm my anger. "Okay, so be it." I agreed, writing only, "Okay, I'll be there." Then I quickly deleted all the messages, so as not to leave any traces. When she came out of the bathroom, I was already lying on the bed, pretending to watch something on my phone. She didn't even realize that I had a revenge plan in my head. I just had to wait for that hour. Time seemed to slow down, but I waited patiently. Finally, when the moment of the meeting approached, I told my wife that I would be going out for a short time on business. She didn't even pay attention, just nodded and continued doing something in the living room. I got in the car and drove to the meeting place, filled with mixed feelings. At the same time angry, confused, and determined to put an end to this situation. I arrived early and stayed in the car, watching everyone who passed by. I waited, keeping calm on the outside, although inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. And then I saw him. He approached the meeting point, looked around, and stopped, waiting. He looked casual, dressed in worn jeans and a leather jacket. "This is it," I thought. This is him, the one who ruined my life. Now I had to take the next step, and I got out of the car, slowly approaching him. As I walked toward him, a storm was raging inside me. I wanted to run up and hit him, but I held back. Each step brought me closer to the man who had ruined my life. He stood there, waiting, looking around with a confident look, not even realizing that it was me, not her. My anger was boiling, but I forced myself to remain calm. As I got closer, I noticed his face. He looked brazen, with a low-pulled hat, a few days of stubble, and a cigarette in the corner of his mouth. A typical representative of some criminal underworld. That's him, I thought. This trash has invaded my life. He looked at me in surprise. And who are you? He said, spitting out the cigarette but on the ground. I stopped for a moment, took a breath, and said, It's me, her husband. His face instantly changed, frowning, his gaze sharp and cold. Instead of being scared or apologizing, he started laughing. So you decided to settle this like a man? He said, with a clearly dismissive tone. His behavior amazed me. He didn't look like a repentant lover at all. Rather, he looked like a man who was used to problems and solved them by force. I'm not here for a showdown, I said, trying to keep my temper in check. Do you know you're destroying the family? He smiled and looked at me with a sly smile. Family? You lost it a long time ago, man. She's with me, and you have nothing to do here. His words hit me hard, but I showed no weakness. You don't even know who you're messing with. He continued, his voice changing sharper. I can make your life a living hell, okay? So just get out of here while I'm at it. His tone and words betrayed his criminal nature. He wasn't just a lover, he was some guy with a shady past. And now I had confirmation that I was dealing with a dangerous man. Everything was boiling inside me, but I couldn't act on emotions. Instead, I put my head down, pretending to break down. Okay, I get it, I said, looking at the ground. You understand? He looked at me with disbelief. I nodded, slowly backing away. Well, get out of here, he muttered, waving his hand as if to shoo away a fly. I turned around and started walking to my car. My heart was pounding, my anger was boiling inside me, but I still held myself back. When I got into the car, I looked in the rearview mirror. He was standing there, still staring at me, as if he was sure of his victory. No, man, you have no idea what's coming, I thought. Now that I knew I was dealing with a dangerous guy, I knew what to do next. I started the engine and drove home. On the way, my head was working clearly. My anger turned into a cold plan. This bastard threatened me, but I had no intention of giving up. He thought he was stronger and smarter, but I was going to show him he was wrong. On the way home, I was determined. Of course, I could have gone back and made a scandal of my wife, demanded an explanation, but what good would that have done? She had already made her choice a long time ago. And that choice was him, that bastard with a criminal record. I realized that conventional methods would not help. My anger had already transformed into a clear and cold plan that I had to implement to the end. When I got home, my wife was in the living room, sitting on the couch watching TV. She gave me a quick glance without asking anything. We crossed eyes, but I immediately turned away. Everything was boiling inside me, but I forced myself to remain calm. Not now, I thought. My time will come. I went to my bedroom and closed the door behind me. I sat down on the bed and started to think. I really started to think. My lover had a criminal past, it was obvious. And that was my advantage. If you take him out, it won't raise much suspicion, especially in this city where such things happen. The police will just write it down as a gang fight. So it's just a matter of finding the right people to do the job. I knew I needed someone reliable who would do it professionally and leave no trace. Through an old acquaintance, I found people who were engaged in such services. In the city, you can always find those who are ready to do any job for money. I dialed the number and made an appointment for the next day. My determination was unshakable. It was a matter of honor, not just revenge. The next day I went out, telling my wife I was going on business. She had no idea what I was up to. On the way to the meeting place, I checked my results several times. Was I really ready to go that far? But every time I remembered the face of this lover and his threats, I gathered my thoughts again. Yes, I am ready. They all deserve it. The meeting took place in an abandoned basement on the outskirts of the city. I was greeted by 3 men, a short, thin man in a black jacket, and 2 of his burly henchmen. "Do you know what you need?" the skinny one asked, looking me straight in the eye. I didn't blink, didn't look away. "Yes, there's a person who needs to be removed," I answered coldly, trying not to show a drop of fear. Then we discussed the details: when, where, how. They were professionals and immediately said that it would look like a regular criminal showdown. I was fine with that. I gave them the information I needed about my lover, including the places he usually went. They promised to let me know when everything was done. A few days later, I received a call. "It's done," the thin voice on the phone said briefly. I took a deep breath and felt a weight finally lift off my shoulders. "Good," I replied and hung up. My mission was complete. Now I could relax. The police made a brief report. Everyone said it was some kind of gangland showdown and didn't even think to investigate further. I was fine with that. I did what I had to do. It was time to move on. I came home and looked at my wife. She had no idea that her lover no longer existed, and I intended to keep it a secret. Now there was only one thing left to do to end this chapter of our life together. For the next few days, I tried to act as if nothing had happened. My wife continued her life as usual, completely unaware that her lover had disappeared from the face of the earth. She was as cold and distant as ever. I had to play the role of a man who doesn't care about anything, and I did even better than I expected. From the news, I learned that the police had found the body. As expected, they decided that it was another criminal showdown. Such cases happen regularly in this city, so the investigation was completed quickly, and no one even thought to dig deeper. It was exactly as the people I had contacted had promised. I was happy with that. Now I could finally exhale and get on with my life. However, there was still one last issue I needed to resolve my wife. After everything that had happened, I could no longer live under the same roof with her. Every time I looked at her, the memories of what she had done boiled over in me. I was trapped, but I knew I had to take the next step. And that step was to break off our relationship. Determined not to put off the conversation any longer, I approached her in the evening when we were both at home. She was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea, deep in thought. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up and saw that I was serious. "About what?" she asked indifferently, as if this conversation was just another ordinary moment in our lives. I felt everything inside me shrink with rage, but I kept my cool. "I want a divorce," I said quietly but firmly. Her face immediately changed, a look of surprise and confusion. She was clearly not expecting this. "What? Why?" she barely managed to say, trying to find some clue in my eyes. I took a deep breath and answered, "I don't love you anymore." Her eyes widened, and she almost started to say something, but I stopped her. "Don't look for reasons. Don't ask questions. Just accept it. It's over between us," I added coldly, doing my best not to give away any other emotion. She sat there stunned, trying to say something, but seemingly at a loss for words. I looked at her, and my soul felt strangely empty. I thought that I would feel joy at this moment, but instead, I was only devastated. I had made a decision and carried it through, but it seemed that there was nothing to fill the betrayal and pain. "Are you serious?" she finally said, almost in despair. I nodded. "It's not sudden. It just has to be," I added, getting up from my chair. "We will discuss everything necessary for the divorce tomorrow. For now, I want to be alone." She remained sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly into space. I went to the bedroom, closed the door, and leaned on it, exhaling slowly. It was done. I had gotten rid of her from my life, just as I had planned. She shouldn't know why I really did it. That will be her punishment, to remain in the dark, to lose everything and not even understand why. I fell back on the bed, closed my eyes, and felt the fatigue begin to roll in. My thoughts were confused, but one thing was clear: everything was over now. And although it didn't bring me the satisfaction I had expected, I knew I had done the right thing. It was time to start over without her. The following weeks passed in tense silence. We hardly talked, communicating only when it was necessary. At first, my wife tried to find out what was going on, why everything had changed so dramatically, but I remained cold and distant. She asked me several times what exactly led to my decision and what she had done wrong. But I just answered in short phrases: "Everything just changed," or "It's my decision and it's final." I even began to think that she was suspicious. Her behavior changed. She became nervous, sometimes irritated. Perhaps she had found out about her lover's disappearance, but she was too scared to discuss it with me. Her fear only fueled my intention to see it through. She lost everything and was left in complete ignorance. The divorce process went smoothly and without scandal. I insisted that we divide everything equally, and she unexpectedly agreed easily. She seemed to be so shocked by the situation that she didn't want to complicate things. Sometimes I could see a question in her eyes, as if she wanted to ask about the real reason for my decision, but held back. I organized the move quietly and quickly. We divided the property as we had agreed, and I left our home where we had lived together for so many years. A strange feeling overwhelmed me as I crossed the threshold for the first time as a free man. Was it liberation? Perhaps. Was it peace? Not really. But I felt that at least now I was in control of my life. My wife stayed in the house. I saw her standing in the doorway, watching me drive away. There was sadness and incomprehension in her eyes. And let her remain in ignorance. Let her destiny now be to live without what she has lost. A few more weeks passed. I started living in a new apartment, trying to build my life from scratch. The first days were strange, as if something familiar was missing in my life. But over time, I got used to the silence. She no longer distracted me with her explanations, excuses, or expectations. I learned from the news that the case of her lover's disappearance had not moved forward. The police decided to leave it unsolved, like dozens of other cases of this kind. This brought me a strange sense of accomplishment. My plan had succeeded. He got what he deserved, and now it was no longer my problem. I was getting further and further away from the life we had together. Every day I felt calmer and more at peace. Divorcing her, this silence and lack of explanation, was the last element of my revenge. Now I was free from pain, free from betrayal, free from the dark stain she had left on my life. In the evenings, I sat in my new home and looked out the window, staring into the distance. Sometimes I thought about what had happened, about how things had turned out. Do I have any regrets? Do I feel regret? No, there was no regret. Instead, there was a sense of inner balance. Yes, everything ended exactly as it was supposed to. It was my ending. It was my story. And I accepted it as it was.